How's it going? Welcome back to the temporary shed where we're going to carry on with the valve clearances. So the first part of the video was checking the clearances, seeing what was in spec and out, and then removing the camshaft and the shim and the buckets. After I finished that bit, I cracked on with all the other lists of things to do, so I'll just show you around. So busy, no rest for the wicked. Got a new sprocket on there. New sprocket on that side. The clutch springs have been done. What else? Bit of paint on the swing arm. It's just drying now because that section there, well, 20 years worth of road abuse. Haven't looked at the carbs yet, but obviously I've got the old battery box and pods out ready to retrofit the airbox in. So we're getting there, we're ticking things off, but this is the valve video. So this is where we left it, and this is now we're going to measure the shims, make a note of the shims, and then do the equation required to get the replacement shims to get everything back in spec. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, obviously, when we left last time, we've got the clearances between the cam lobes and the shims. We now need to measure these shims. They are usually stamped with their size on there, but obviously that tends to not last very long. See, there's 0 markings on these. Now, annoyingly, to measure these, you really want to use a micrometer. My micrometer's at work. Vernier calipers, digital ones, doable. I mean, you can get the whole of the shim in there. So I'm going to be measuring each one. Making a note of each one, keeping them all in the right spots. So that's the first thing to do, is measure each of these, and then we'll get to the equation. Okay then, so we're upstairs now. We've taken the measurements that we need, and I've just gone online now and gone onto the Triumph site and just ordered up the shims that I needed. But in order to find out what I needed, I had to do a little bit of maths, and that normally terrifies me, because if you know me, you know that I take maths thickness to a whole new level. I am appalling at maths, but I think I've managed to get through it. Just hopefully when we review this footage we don't find any glaring errors in my workings out. So this was the chart we made, and I've circled the ones that are out of tolerance. So it was exhaust 2, exhaust 3, inlet 2 and inlet 3. So the measured with the feeler gauge, the measured clearance on E2 was 0.25. The tolerances are 0.25 to 0.30, so yes, it's just in, but it's at the very limit of the tolerance. 0.29 again at the top end. It's technically it's in, but as I'm taking all this stuff apart, I might as well try and get them a bit more middle diddle. Again, I2 at the very top end, and I3 at 0.14. That's out. So the second numbers we've got are the shim measurements of the shims, the actual shims that were in there. So we've taken those out. So we've got these two numbers now, and we use those in an equation, which sounds a lot scarier than it actually is. Interestingly, I don't think the Triumph manual gives you the equation, but the Haynes manual does. And it sounds a lot more daunting than it is, but it isn't really that bad. So the equation is, I should have really done this a bit better, but A equals brackets B minus C plus D. So A is the shim size we're looking for, the required shim size. That's what we're trying to get out of this equation. B is the valve clearance that we took with the feeler gauge. C, I've written down specified clearance. Really, that a better word for that would be the ideal clearance. So that's when we reference back to the inlet and the exhaust tolerances, which was 0.15 to 0.20 inlet. So middle diddle of that, right slap bang in the middle, is 0.175. Or the exhaust, which was 0.25 up to 0.30, slap bang in the middle diddle of that is 0.275. So those are the ideal numbers you're looking for, because they're going to be slap bang in the middle of the tolerance. So that's kind of C, that's that figure. We've gone middle for both of those, and that's the one we're using. And then D, plus D, is your existing shim thickness. So the shim that's in there that you've just taken out and measured, that's the other number. So I did that for, initially I did it for all of them, just to get a bit of an idea. But obviously the ones we're looking at, we'll just go with exhaust 2, for example. So the measured, with the feeler gauge, the measured clearance was 0.25. We minus 0.275 from that, so that's in our brackets, and that gives us minus 0.025. And then to that we add D, which was the shim thickness, 2.77, which I've done there, 2.77, and that gives us a 2.745. So that's the shim size, the ideal shim size that we want. And you just repeat that for all of them, just bearing in mind that with the exhaust ones, remember to do it 0.275, sorry, down there. And then when you come to the inlets, subtract that to 1.75, because obviously different, they're the tolerances that we're going middle diddle with. They're your valve clearances, minus those two, then add the shim thickness, and that will give you the required shim. So I did that for all those. The pink ones are the ones that were the ones that I need to replace. And then I ended up with this sheet. Now I have to do everything very long-winded and about 8 times over just to make sure I've done it right. Well, at least I hope I've done it right. So this is what I ended up with. So E2, we had an ideal clearance value of 0.275. The measured clearance that I had was 0.25. The measured shim was 2.78. So that meant I had a requirement for a 2.755 shim. Fine, you think, but when you go on there, you're not going to get all of these shim values. The nearest one I had, that they had on the item number 20 on the website, if we scroll down, and if you get to the 20s, you can see these are all the different size shims that are listed. You're probably not going to see it, you just have to go on a website. I've gone to Triumph World, you can go to Fowler's. You can get probably aftermarket Japanese shims, you know, Japanese size shims. I think they're a 25mm shim, but I'm just getting them off Triumph. There we go, and that's the shims ordered. So now we've just got to wait for them to come. I've even paid a couple of quid extra for some express delivery, just to try and get them in quickly. So but they are finally through now. So got my 4 replacement ones. I ordered a couple of the extra washers as well, just to put fresh ones on there. I had a fresh O-ring for the oil feed pipe. Yeah, let's get cracking. Yeah, you can see that's how they're stamped normally with the size on there. So you can see how that gets worn off quite quickly. What's the other thing I was going to mention? Oh yeah, so in my little table that I did to find the shims, you'll see that that was the required shim size we have, but you're not always going to be able to get order the shim to that exact size. You're going to have to get the closest one to it. So for instance, I needed a 2.755, so the closest one they do for that is a 2.750. So that kind of happens with two of them were fine, and those two I had to see which one was the closest one to order. So in each instance I've ordered the closest. So right, let's get set up and let's get cracking. Just, on my little chart still here, and the cat hasn't kicked anything over thankfully in the week. So we've got the new shims. They're quite obviously different to the old shims, but all the ones that are being replaced. I'm going to get a little bit of oil and just coat the shims with oil, and the shim buckets, just give them a light smear of oil all over as I reinstall everything. Okay, so we've got the buckets and the shims in and oiled. Now make sure obviously that you select the correct camshaft, from whether it was from carb side or inlet side. Double check that your top is there. You've got your dot or line alignment marks. Everything's where it should be, and rematch it up again as it was. Again, so just make sure your markings are all lined up. Make sure that your camshafts are seated correctly. Alright, make sure of course that you don't mix any of these up from where they originally came off from. Always pay attention to if there's been an arrow etched onto the top. Make sure this face here sits inside the groove on this groove on the camshaft here. That sits in there. The camshaft can move left and right a little bit, so just make sure that sits neatly on the inside like it is there. You can see that and that bit there. This goes without saying then, tighten them down ever so, just go slowly, evenly as well, don't get them cocked to one side, just nice and gently. There shouldn't be hardly any resistance in getting them down seated. If they are, just take a moment, back them off, check your dowels that sit in there, but it should be a very easy. My hands were quite greasy, so just to really lightly seat these bolts to get everything gently all in place. And I did use a Torx key just to lightly seat them because my hands are so greasy they're slipping off the bolt heads. But just, yeah, you shouldn't have to lean on anything to get it to this stage, especially here. Just double check those bits we were saying where they sit. Let's try and get that focus. Make sure that sits in that groove there. Don't be, watch out if the cam arms moved a little bit. Don't be tightening down on that bit, because obviously you're going to end up cracking this or something like that, which is just not something you want to be doing. But yeah, get everything all gently sat down. Do not forget to remove your pins from the backlash gear as well. I mean, that for me, they are quite small. Things I found, if you remember. What I'm going to do is put the camera down while I take those out and dry my hands off, because my fingers are a little bit greasy, and the last thing I'm going to do is drop one of these bad boys down into the engine. That would not be good. So let me just put this down and dry my hands. Right, so we'll start the tightening sequences. So we'll do this outer one first, then this one, and then that one third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Right, so with all those torqued down, something else that I don't know if it's mentioned, but something I just do just because it kind of feels right. But each of the so you got the 4 valve cover bolts, and they go straight through the cam holder onto the camshaft, and then you've got the oil feed ones that go there. But each one of those, I'll just pop a little bit of oil down each one. Not much, just a little squidge. And then to seat the shims and everything, I'll just rotate everything by hand again. And then that just seems to coat the oil around the camshaft as well. Which, I don't know if it's doing anything, but and then we're going to retake all the clearances with the new shims, check they're all in spec. If so, I'll pop the oil feed pipe on. I don't think I'll film, I'll turn off now and not film me doing that, because it's the same process as before, but I'll soon tell you if there's anything untoward happening. So join me in a second when hopefully we'll be putting the oil feed pipe and the valve cover back on. Fresh crush washers and the oil feed pipe back on. If we have a quick look at the previous readings, we had a 28, 25, 29, 28. We're now at 27, 28, 27, 28. 18, 20, 14, 16, 18, 17, 16, 16. So almost as good as middle diddle, pretty much bang on. So happy days. I'm going to stick a fresh valve cover gasket on just because I don't know how long that one's been on for. And there possibly seems to be a bit of a light weep. So I think these are, I'll double check it, I think they're 14 Newton meters. They felt a lot looser than that, but who knows, we'll see. But you know, I've got it, and we've got the brown version washers. Actually, let me compare the two of those. I'll pop the old ones out of here. There we go, we can see the difference between the old ones. These are the new style brown ones. Whichever way though, I think they've been reused a fair few times. So definitely, you can get away sometimes with using these once or twice, but those look like it's time to say goodbye. So we'll pop on these fresh ones. Right, so she's all back together, and I'm just taking her for a quick test ride, and all's pretty good to report back. It's pulling really well, running really nicely. Maybe a couple of minor tweaks to do, really sort of almost at the idle and very low rev range. I don't know, just kind of doesn't feel as good as it could be, but mid-range and top end absolutely fine. No slipping of the clutch with the softer springs, which I kind of didn't think there would be. The clutch action is beautiful, much lighter. It does feel totally different. Hasn't completely cured the judding, juddering though, I've got to say. Just as I pulled up actually to the shed, there was just a little bit of a very light, but I'll keep an eye on that. But I just wanted to do a quick blast around the block. You know, technically not an essential journey. Well, kind of an essential journey, because I needed to check that it was okay for getting to work, which it is, and I'll do the fine tuning from there on. But job's a good one. So there we go, end of the valve clearance and shim adjustment video. Thanks for watching. Pretty much all the stuff on that Bonneville is done now, so hopefully I can get back to the Bonneville America kind of project thing that's going on, because I want to ride my own bike, and as the weather's getting nicer, Jen is probably going to want to start taking that to work. So take care out there. There is another little video that I'll put up in a day or two after this one. A little extra thing I did with this one, but I haven't included it in this video because I wanted to keep the kind of the valve and the shims bit separate. But there we go. Look after yourselves out there. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time.